In 2019, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. 6 weeks later, it was worth less than $8 billion. This is the story of the fastest corporate implosion in modern history. A story of charisma, delusion, and one of the most spectacular failures Silicon Valley has ever seen. By the end of this video, you'll understand how a company renting office space convinced the world it was worth more than General Motors, and why it all came crashing down in a matter of weeks. This is the rise and fall of WeWork. The founders. Our story begins in 2008, in the middle of the global financial crisis. While banks were collapsing and unemployment was soaring, two men in New York City had an idea. Adam Neumann was a 29-year-old Israeli entrepreneur with a magnetic personality and a history of failed business ventures. Miguel McKelvey was an architect and a calmer, more grounded presence. They had met years earlier at a green building company, and now they were about to launch something new. Their idea was simple: take old, underutilized buildings in New York City, renovate them into modern, aesthetically pleasing workspaces, and rent them out to freelancers, startups, and small businesses who couldn't afford traditional office leases. They called it WeWork. The first location. The first WeWork opened in Soho, Manhattan, in April 2010. It was a 6-story building with exposed brick walls, communal tables, and free beer on tap. The vibe was part coffee shop, part co-working space, part social club. The pitch was compelling. Instead of signing a multi-year lease, paying for furniture, and dealing with utilities, businesses could rent a desk or a private office on flexible terms. Everything was included: internet, coffee, conference rooms, even beer and kombucha. For freelancers and startups operating on tight budgets, this was revolutionary. And for Adam Neumann, it was just the beginning. Early growth. By 2012, WeWork had expanded to 10 locations across New York and San Francisco. Membership was growing fast. The spaces were always full. Revenue was climbing. But Adam didn't want to build a real estate company. He wanted to build a lifestyle brand, a movement. He started talking about WeWork not as a co-working company, but as a platform for human connection, a way to elevate the world's consciousness. Investors found this vision intoxicating. Here was a charismatic founder with a bold idea and early traction. Venture capital started flowing in. In 2014, WeWork raised $355 million in a Series D round, giving the company a valuation of $5 billion. That's when things started to get strange. The SoftBank effect. In 2017, everything changed. Masayoshi Son, the billionaire CEO of SoftBank, met Adam Neumann for the first time. The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. Son famously told Adam he wasn't thinking big enough, that WeWork should be 10 times bigger, that it could be worth hundreds of billions. Son committed to investing billions of dollars through SoftBank's Vision Fund, the largest venture capital fund in history. The first check was $4.4 billion. With SoftBank's backing, WeWork went from growing strategically to growing recklessly. Adam's mantra became, grow faster than anyone thought possible. Worry about profitability later. The expansion frenzy. WeWork began opening new locations at a breakneck pace, not just in major cities, but everywhere: Beijing, London, Tokyo, Berlin, Tel Aviv. By 2019, WeWork operated 528 locations in 111 cities across 29 countries. They were signing leases for buildings far into the future, often 10 or 15-year commitments, while renting out desks on month-to-month contracts. This created a massive long-term liability with very little revenue certainty. The business model was fundamentally flawed. WeWork was spending far more on leases than it was earning from rent. But as long as new funding rounds kept coming in, the company could mask the losses with growth metrics. By 2019, WeWork was burning through $100 million every single month. The culture inside WeWork. The culture was equal parts utopian and chaotic. Adam styled himself as a modern-day Steve Jobs. He gave TED-style talks about changing the world. He renamed the company the We Company to reflect its expanding ambitions beyond co-working spaces. Employees were encouraged to drink at work. Company parties were legendary and expensive. At one company retreat, the bill exceeded $7 million. Private jets became routine. Adam reportedly spent $60 million on 5 personal homes while the company was hemorrhaging cash. And then there were the side ventures. Mission creep. Adam didn't want WeWork to be just about office space. He launched WeGrow, a private school charging $42,000 per year. WeLive, a co-living concept with shared apartments, and even WeSurf, although that never left the drawing board. None of these ventures made money. In fact, they lost millions. But Adam's rhetoric was always the same. WeWork wasn't about real estate. It was a tech company, a platform company. It was building the infrastructure for a new way of working and living. Investors wanted to believe, and the valuation kept climbing. By early 2019, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. On paper, Adam Neumann was worth $4.1 billion. The conflicts of interest. As WeWork grew, so did concerns about Adam's behavior. One of the most glaring issues was the conflicts of interest. Adam owned buildings that he then leased back to WeWork. He trademarked the word "we" personally, then sold it to the company for $5.9 million. He took out hundreds of millions in personal loans using his WeWork stock as collateral, money he then used to buy more properties that WeWork would lease. Board members raised concerns, but Adam had structured the company so that he had majority voting control, 10 votes for every share he owned. Even if the entire board voted against him, he could overrule them. The burn rate. By 2019, the financial situation was becoming impossible to ignore. WeWork had lost $1.9 billion in 2018. In the first half of 2019 alone, losses exceeded $900 million. Despite operating 528 locations, the company had never turned a profit. Not once. And the business model made profitability virtually impossible. Long-term leases created fixed costs that couldn't be adjusted, but revenue was volatile. If the economy turned and businesses started cutting spending on office space, WeWork would still be on the hook for billions in rent payments. The IPO preparation. In 2019, WeWork decided to go public. An IPO would bring in desperately needed cash and provide an exit for early investors. To prepare, the company filed an S-1 document with the SEC. This is a legally required disclosure that details a company's financials, risks, and governance structure. When the document was released in August 2019, the public got its first detailed look at WeWork's inner workings. What they saw was shocking. The S-1 fiasco. The problems were everywhere. Corporate governance. Adam had total control through supervoting shares. The board couldn't check him. Related party transactions. Multiple instances of Adam doing business with himself. Financial losses, massive and growing. The path to profitability was unclear. Lease liabilities, over $47 billion in long-term commitments. Mission statement. The S-1 described WeWork's mission as elevating the world's consciousness. Investors didn't know what that meant or how to value it. Wall Street analysts were brutal. One called the S-1 the worst IPO prospectus I've ever seen. Others questioned whether WeWork was a viable business at all. The media piled on. Stories emerged about Adam's erratic behavior, smoking marijuana on private jets, drinking tequila during board meetings. Bizarre statements like claiming he wanted to live forever and become president of the world. The narrative shifted from visionary founder to delusional CEO. The valuation collapse. WeWork had hoped to IPO at a valuation of $47 billion, matching its last private funding round. But as the S-1 revelations sank in, that number began to plummet. First, investment banks suggested $30 billion, then $20 billion, then $15 billion. Investors weren't biting. The IPO roadshow was a disaster. Meetings with institutional investors went poorly. Questions about governance and profitability went unanswered. By mid-September, the valuation estimates had fallen to $10 billion, then $8 billion. The IPO was in freefall. On September 16, 2019, WeWork officially postponed its IPO. The company issued a vague statement about market conditions. In reality, the IPO had failed. And without it, WeWork was in serious trouble. The cash crisis. Here's the problem. WeWork had been spending money assuming the IPO would happen. The company was burning through $100 million per month, and its cash reserves were running low. Without new funding, WeWork would run out of money within weeks. The company was facing bankruptcy. SoftBank, WeWork's largest investor, was on the hook for billions. If WeWork collapsed, SoftBank's Vision Fund would take catastrophic losses. Masayoshi Son had no choice but to step in. Adam's exit. But there was a condition. Adam Neumann had to go. On September 24, 2019, Adam stepped down as CEO. He remained chairman, but his operational control was over. It wasn't enough. Investors and board members wanted him completely out. After tense negotiations, Adam agreed to resign from the board entirely. The price? A staggering exit package. Adam received $1.7 billion. That's not a typo. $1.7 billion for running a company into the ground. The package included $1 billion in stock sales, a $500 million loan repayment, and a $185 million consulting fee. SoftBank also agreed to buy $1 billion worth of Adam's shares at a premium. Employees and investors were furious. While Adam walked away a billionaire, thousands of WeWork employees were laid off. The company that preached community and shared prosperity had rewarded its disgraced founder with one of the richest exit packages in corporate history, the rescue deal. In October 2019, SoftBank orchestrated a rescue. It would inject $6.5 billion into WeWork in exchange for majority control. The company's valuation was officially set at $8 billion, an 83% drop from its peak just months earlier. New leadership took over. Sandeep Mathrani, a real estate veteran, became CEO. Cost-cutting began immediately. WeGrow shut down. WeLive was scaled back. Thousands of employees were laid off. WeWork survived, but barely, and its reputation was in tatters. So what happened? How did a company valued at $47 billion collapse so spectacularly? Problem number one, the business model was broken. At its core, WeWork's business model was fundamentally flawed. The company signed long-term leases, commitments that locked it into paying rent for 10 or 15 years, but it rented out space on short-term, flexible contracts, month to month, no long-term commitments. This created a massive mismatch. If a recession hit and businesses stopped renting desks, WeWork would still owe billions in rent to landlords. Traditional real estate companies don't operate this way. They match lease durations. They manage risk carefully. But WeWork wasn't interested in being a traditional real estate company. Problem number two, it wasn't a tech company. Adam constantly framed WeWork as a technology company, not a real estate company. Tech companies, tech valuations, tech multiples. But WeWork wasn't a tech company. It owned no revolutionary software. Its competitive advantage wasn't code. It was leases, interior design, and branding. Tech companies scale with minimal marginal cost. Each new user costs almost nothing to serve, but each new WeWork location required a massive upfront investment, renovations, furniture, staff, and then ongoing costs for utilities, maintenance, and rent. The economics were real estate economics, but the valuation was tech company valuation. That disconnect was always going to collapse. Problem number three, the culture of excess. WeWork spent money like a company making billions in profit. Private jets, lavish parties, expensive side ventures, a $60 million liquor sponsorship deal just so employees could drink premium tequila. These weren't signs of a visionary culture. They were signs of a lack of financial discipline. And at the top, Adam's personal spending was out of control. Buying properties, taking huge loans, living like a billionaire while the company lost billions. Problem number four, no checks on the founder. Adam controlled the board through super-voting shares. He couldn't be overruled. He couldn't be fired. Investors had handed him total power, and he used it to enrich himself and pursue vanity projects. Good corporate governance exists for a reason. Boards provide oversight. They challenge bad ideas. They protect shareholders. WeWork had none of that. Adam's vision was law, and no one could stop him until the IPO forced public scrutiny. Problem number five, the SoftBank effect. SoftBank's $10 billion investment should have been a turning point, and in a way it was, but not a good one. Masayoshi Son told Adam to grow faster, to think bigger, to ignore profitability and focus on scale. This was terrible advice. It encouraged reckless expansion. It prioritized growth over fundamentals, and it created an environment where bad decisions were celebrated as bold moves. SoftBank enabled Adam's worst instincts, and when the company collapsed, SoftBank lost billions. So what can we learn from WeWork's collapse? Lesson number 1, business models matter. Hype can only carry a company so far. At some point, the fundamentals have to work. Revenue has to exceed costs. Growth has to be sustainable. WeWork's model was broken from the start. Long-term liabilities, short-term revenue. No path to profitability. No amount of charisma or marketing could fix that. If a business doesn't make economic sense, it will fail, period. Lesson number 2, governance protects everyone. Super voting shares, unchecked founder control. These things sound appealing when a founder is brilliant, but they become catastrophic when a founder is reckless. Good governance isn't an obstacle to innovation. It's a safeguard. It prevents disasters. WeWork is a case study in what happens when governance fails. Lesson number 3, culture isn't a business strategy. WeWork sold a vision of community, of purpose, of elevating consciousness. But culture doesn't pay the bills. Products do. Services do. Profit does. The best company culture in the world won't save a failing business model. Culture is important, but it can't be a substitute for sound business fundamentals. Lesson number 4, watch for red flags. The warning signs were there: conflicts of interest, burn rates, governance issues, but investors ignored them because they wanted to believe in the vision. When investing in or working with any company, red flags matter. Don't ignore them. Don't rationalize them. They're warnings for a reason. Lesson number 5, exits matter. Adam Neumann walked away with $1.7 billion. He had failed spectacularly, but he still got rich. Meanwhile, employees lost their jobs. Investors lost billions. WeWork's reputation was destroyed. This isn't just unfair. It's a structural problem in how we fund and govern startups. Founders should be rewarded for success, not for failure. WeWork's story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that charisma and vision aren't enough, that fundamentals matter, that governance matters, that discipline matters. In 2019, WeWork was the symbol of startup excess, a company that raised billions, spent recklessly, and collapsed under scrutiny. But here's the twist. WeWork didn't die. In 2021, after restructuring, WeWork went public through a SPAC merger. Its valuation, $9 billion, a fraction of its peak, but enough to survive. Today, WeWork still operates. It's a smaller, quieter company. The hype is gone, the parties are over, but the co-working spaces remain. The question is, what did we learn? Will the next WeWork be stopped before it reaches $47 billion? Or will history repeat itself? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into business failures and successes. Drop a comment below. What company should I cover next? Until next time.